first thing you can drink is lemon or lime juice. Either one is great. I have a lemon and a lime tree in my back garden, and I usually use whichever one is in season. And right now that would be lemons. Of course, you'd be better off with the fresh lemon or lime juice because of the vitamin C and the antioxidants and everything. But what you really want there is the acidity. So if you can't get fresh lemons and limes for any reason, either they're too expensive or they're out of season or whatever, you can easily use the bottled variety as well. We have an enzyme in our saliva called salivary amylase, and what this does is that it breaks down starch into smaller units which eventually give glucose. What happens is that when you take acid, it stops this enzyme from working. So you don't get the starch broken down and you don't get the glucose in your blood. Another thing that this acid does is that it slows down the rate at which your stomach empties, which means that one, you'll feel fuller for longer, and two, the process of digestion is slowed down so that even when you do get glucose in your blood, the rise is much slower and much more gradual. The second thing you can use is vinegar. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about apple cider vinegar with the mother, raw, unfiltered and all that. It doesn't really matter. Any kind of vinegar will work. So that means that you can use white vinegar, you can use the apple cider vinegar, whether it's been distilled or whether it's been filtered or whether it's raw, whatever. You can use rice vinegar. The important thing is that the vinegar shouldn't have any sugar added to it. Being acidic, vinegar works in much the same way as lemon or lime juice, but it has some added benefits. One of them is that it increases the sensitivity of your muscles to insulin, which means that your overworked pancreas doesn't have to produce as much insulin after your meal to bring down your blood sugar. And then apple cider vinegar in particular has antioxidants, polyphenols from the apples that are used to make the vinegar. And then if you're taking the apple cider vinegar that's raw and unfiltered, that means that it has the mother of vinegar, which acts as a probiotic, which is useful if you have gut issues. Another thing that you can drink is wine. And yes, wine is acidic, but there are other ways in which it brings down blood sugar. So when you're not eating, your liver breaks down stored glycogen to produce glucose. It also produces glucose from amino acids from your proteins and fatty acids from your fat. All this is to make sure that your blood sugar never falls below a certain level. When you drink alcohol, alcohol takes priority over anything else in your liver. So your liver will break down that alcohol first. While it's breaking down this alcohol, it can't produce glucose from glycogen and it can't produce glucose from amino acids and from fatty acids, which means that your blood sugar keeps going lower and lower and lower. And if I were to rank these three drinks from worst to best, right at the bottom of the list would be wine, because yes, it does bring down your blood sugar, but it does it in a rather unpredictable way. And when you're taking blood sugar lowering medication, it's not a good idea to combine alcohol with that. Another problem is that when you have diabetes, you already have fatty liver. So when you drink alcohol, which also causes fatty liver, you're giving yourself problems from two different angles. So it's not a great combination. Then in the middle would be your lemon or lime juice because of the vitamin C and antioxidants that are in the natural form. Then at the top of the list would be vinegar, particularly apple cider vinegar, because of one, the effect on the muscles to increase insulin sensitivity, and the presence of the mother, which can help with gut problems. So what do you do before you start eating? Take 2 tablespoons of lime or lemon juice or vinegar and put that into half a glass of water and drink that before you start eating. You can do this up to 30 minutes before your meal. The second thing you can do is to take a fiber supplement, either cognac or psyllium, with a lot of water, and you can do that up to 30 minutes before your meal. And the next thing you can do before you eat is to eat a big plate of vegetables, particularly greens. The last two are particularly handy when you're going out and you're not sure if you'll be able to get healthy food to eat while you're out and about. And the next thing is that you need to plan ahead, which will prepare you for the next step in the process. Never eat your starches alone. Always combine them with protein, with fat, with fiber, at least one of these, and preferably all three. So if you eat an egg sandwich, that's the egg that has the fat and the protein combined with the starch in the bread. If you're eating rice and you combine it with beans, the beans has fiber and the rice has starch. If you're eating potatoes, add a little dab of butter or ghee, which is fat, which balances out the starch in the potatoes. If you're eating oatmeal, combine it with nuts, with seeds, with berries, which will give you fiber, some protein and some fat. What do you do during your meal? First of all, if you're having a starter, make it vegetables. Don't start with bread. Then you look at your plate and find the food that has the most fiber. That will typically be your vegetables, and you eat that first. Next will come your protein and your fat, which would be your meat, your chicken, your fish, and so on. And then last would be your starches, which would be your rice, your potatoes, and pasta, for example. If for some reason you can't separate out the food groups, then it's not a big deal. Just eat everything together. Just the fact that you're eating these things combined with your starch means that your blood sugar spike will be less. Then especially if you don't want to drink the vinegar, you can find ways to add vinegar to your food. It can be in the form of a dressing on your vegetables or your salad. The Japanese use vinegar in rice. The Brits have vinegar with fish and chips. So all these will help to reduce the spike from the starch in the food. Then if you're having desserts, you'd eat that last. So let's move on to what to do after your meal. But before that, you might be asking, why should I be worried about blood sugar spikes anyway? The three main groups that make up the bulk of your food are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And the carbohydrates are the ones that are going to raise your blood sugar the most. And the main function of this glucose, which comes from carbohydrates, is to go into your cells to be used for energy. So let's say that you're working in the boiler room of a steam train, and every day you get just enough coal to keep the train moving and functioning the way that it should. Then one day you get coal delivered at 7 a.m. and you start using that. Then you get more coal at 9 a.m. You can't use it, so you put it off to one side. Every 2 hours you keep getting a delivery of coal, and because you don't have anything to do with it, you can't use it up, you keep pushing it off to one side and storing it. Eventually, you'll have so much coal stored in that boiler room that you won't even be able to move your arms to shovel the coal into the furnace. And what will happen? Your train will slow down and eventually it will stop. It's the same thing that happens in your mitochondria, in your cells, where energy is produced. They keep getting flooded with so much glucose from repeated blood sugar spikes that at a point they don't know what to do with all this glucose. They can't process it fast enough and it just piles up and you slow down. So if you're going on a journey with your car and you have a full tank of petrol, you're going to get much further than the person who has half a tank of petrol. So think of your pancreas as that car. By the time you find out you have high blood sugar, you've already lost half of the cells in your pancreas that produce insulin. So where your pancreas is concerned, you're basically starting your journey with half a tank of gas. And when you combine this with the insulin resistance that you have in diabetes, this makes it much more difficult to bring down your blood sugar after each blood sugar spike. And when you have all the sugar floating around in your system, it attaches itself to everything. Glucose attaches itself to your eyes, to your heart, to your blood vessels, to your kidneys, and all these things don't work the way that they should. This process is known as browning. It's the same thing that happens when you toast a slice of bread. Once you toast it, you can't untoast it. It's permanent. And the more glucose spikes you have, the more sugar you have circulating in your system, the faster you're browning on the inside. Regular table sugar is half glucose and half fructose. The glucose part will raise your blood sugar. The fructose part won't raise your blood sugar, but it causes this browning reaction 10 times faster than glucose. So you don't want lots of fructose circulating around in your system either. So what do you do after your meal? Within 30 minutes of eating, get active for 10 to 20 minutes. You can walk, you can dance, you can do kickboxing, you can do squats, climb stairs, it doesn't matter. But the most important thing is that you should be slightly breathless and you should try and move the big muscles of your body. That would be your trunk and your legs. And the great thing about muscle is that when it's active, it can actually take glucose out of the blood without insulin. And this is great if you have type 1 diabetes, because that means that you'd be injecting less insulin after your meal, which is always a good thing. Even if you're not diabetic, having repeated blood sugar spikes will encourage your body to store fat, and you will notice that over time. But it will also affect your day-to-day life because you might develop dizziness, drowsiness, food cravings, headaches, brain fog, anxiety, nausea, and constant hunger. Having multiple blood sugar spikes throughout the day, every day, will depress your immunity, and that will make it more likely for you to get infections like colds. So what do you do about snacks? Choose savory rather than sweet. Opt for things like cheese, nuts, vegetables with a dip, for example, pickles. Those are good options. Opt for starchy food rather than sugary food. I'll tell you why in a minute. Then drink some vinegar with your snack, either before or within 30 minutes of having that snack. The reason why you would opt for starchy rather than sweet is that the vinegar acts on starch digestion, but it doesn't affect sugar. So if you have lots of sugar, your blood sugar will still go up, even though you're taking vinegar. And all these tips will be even more effective if you combine them with what you learn when you watch this next video.